Hi everyone, welcome to Oddcast, a For Nerds by Nerd show. My name is Paige and I'm here with my co-hosts Cien and Joe, and today we're going to debate on what makes a reboot.
Reboot! 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 Reboot!
So, who wants to take it?
I'm going to go first because I just want to throw this out there real quick. So, I want to give our audience a little bit of insight, a little bit of preview, but a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look. So, we have actually recorded twice before a video about reboots.
But reboots in general, like the reboots that are coming out and that there's so many of them.
Why are they doing it?
Yeah, and then it didn't take. The video is not good. So then we recorded it a second time.
A reboot of the reboot, if you will.
Yeah, and that one had its own problems, and then it vanished. Technical errors caused it to go away, and just like that, we didn't have a reboot episode. So we do behind-the-scenes production meetings with one another where we discuss the topics that we're going to have. And in the discussion of rebooting the reboot conversation more time, it actually sparked a debate between Cien and I about what is a reboot. Yep. So now you are privy to not the reboot of the reboot video, but instead a discussion about reboots and about what makes the reboots.
And it's only because Joe's definition of what a reboot is based on movie titles that we talked about. I don't agree that those are reboots.
Okay, so why don't we each take a moment to share what we think is a reboot? So, Joe, what is your definition?
It's a poopy. No.
Welcome
to my debate style now.
Give me a title. Give me a title of two movies that the original and then your reboot.
But so the problem isn't what is a reboot. The problem that we had was actually the definition of a soft reboot and a hard reboot.
Which I didn't necessarily feel that soft reboot is a real thing.
So to me,
if softcore porn and hardcore porn are two distinct things, there's a soft reboot and a hard reboot. I'm just saying, like, that's fair.
So in the reboot that has the penis in it, I would say that Sabrina, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, to me is a hard reboot because it is taking the same subject material, meaning it's based from the comics. However, it's a different spin on that same information. So it is a hard reboot. You can look at the two and be like, that is different from that one. But a softer reboot would be almost like a sequel, but not. It can continue from the same world, but it is a reboot of the material in order to sell it to a new audience. And to me, that would be like a Jurassic World versus a Jurassic Park. It is based on continuity from the first one. It is tied to the first one, but it is not necessarily a direct sequel to the first trilogy of films.
Negative.
Why do you negate that?
All right, so we're going to go with Jurassic World, okay?
That's a good example.
Really good example. Jurassic World, obviously, Jurassic Park, the whole nine. It's a sequel. It's not a reboot. It's a sequel because it's the same stories, the same people. They talk about the same, what happened, I don't know, last two islands, even what happened in New York. It's a sequel. It's not a reboot.
So I think what makes a reboot is reestablishing the baseline. And Jurassic World reestablishes the baseline, which is what makes it a soft reboot.
So
a hard reboot erases the original. It erases it, writes over it completely, whereas a soft reboot sits like over top of it, established on the foundation that was already there, and adds up.
So
that's how I would define the difference.
When I was looking up a definition actually of the word soft reboot, there was no actual definition, but there were people who talked.
You actually looked it up?
Yes, because I didn't really believe.
Here's another behind the scenes thing. If Joe says something, Paige and Cien will look it up to prove him wrong.
Yeah. Well, the thing is,
it's not about proving you wrong. It's making sure we understand the facts.
Yeah, it is 100% about proving me wrong. Because even if I concede with, okay, fine, you're right, still the need to look it up and tell me what it is.
Because I like to verify the facts. It ain't about you. It ain't always about you.
It's not about you.
So, in my situation, there is no actual soft reboot, but it's like words that are just out there that people tend to use.
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
So, soft reboot when I looked
It's a
up,
colloquial term that
Yeah.
that has its own connotation that enables you to understand what we're talking about. If I say soft, you know what we're talking about,
right? But in this situation, when I actually looked up soft reboot, the definition that somebody wrote out was actually I'm paraphrasing, but basically says that it has a general core story, but has nothing to do with the previous movies. Basically, this is what it was saying.
So in their definition of it, it removes the idea that they are linked.
Correct.
They can take place in the same world, and they can have stuff on them, but it is a completely different story.
So I'll give you an example. Masters of the Universe on Netflix, I would say, is a reboot.
I mean, we don't know for sure because it's not out.
No.
Yeah, it is.
The
Kevin Smith one.
Oh,
The-
you see how
There's
much I
actually,
pay
there's actually
attention?
3 of them now. But
Yeah, the Kevin Smith one was a direct continuation of the original content from the 80s. However, I would say that it is a soft reboot because the idea is to relaunch it so that other people...
yeah, so
Can
that was
participate.
that was the thing that you and I talked about. Joe likes to use soft reboot and his definition of it is that it's a way for a company is a way for the company to relaunch that brand, and that's not what I think that is.
I see both sides. I see it both ways.
She sees it both ways.
Yeah,
I've read it both ways. You haven't.
we're not gonna win this debate if she doesn't choose a side.
I'm the moderate in the middle. That
in the
is
middle.
not.
So my definition basically of a reboot or a soft reboot would be, for example, if they did this doesn't exist, but everybody's seen Willow.
You think it doesn't exist?
For the most part. Everybody's seen Willow. I think a
I don't think
reboot
everyone has
of
seen
Willow would be Willow in the future. Like a technological version of Willow.
Or
That's
just
a reboot.
A
So-
redoing of
Yeah, so that would be a
Willow.
retelling of Willow, and there have been plenty of retellings. There is a sequel to Willow coming, by the way, on Disney Plus.
Supposedly.
However,
Retellings and reboots are not the same thing, though. I would not consider a
Then
futuristic
that's
Willow a reboot.
then
it would
that's
be
a good thing.
retelling.
I
That's a good
would
thing to bring
consider
up,
it to
then.
be a hard reboot, though, because Ghostbusters 2016 was
a
Shitty
reboot.
one.
was a
Reboot of
but it was
Ghostbusters.
a hard
Correct.
reboot. So if you were to bring back Willow and put it in the future, well, that's not necessarily true because Ghostbusters 2016 hit a bunch of different checkpoints or check marks on the boxes for telling a different story.
Because what tends to happen...
Are you redoing like the same story, or are you doing like a?
It's basically
Are
the
you
same
doing
story.
Cinderella on Amazon Prime?
No, it's the same story. It just takes place in the future.
I feel like that's
Flying
a
cars.
retelling.
So this is okay. So here's where I think, in my opinion, for Joe, the lines get blurred.
Okay.
Sequels, technically, based on Joe's description, then doesn't really exist.
So I think that there are direct continuations of stories. However, a reboot would be... So I guess what... I think I know now what the crux of our debate is. I think that there has to be a certain amount of real time, not in story time, that takes place between the two.
I think it would need to be both real time and story time. Because for the new Sabrina that's coming out, the continuation, I feel like it's also... Because it's a relaunching, it feels like a soft reboot to me. Because in my definition of a soft reboot that I explained, it's building on top of something else to put it forward. It's a significant amount of time has happened in between the end of Sabrina the Teenage Witch and this new one that's being made.
Sabrina's Teenage Witch.
Oh, is that what it's called?
Yeah, because
It's about her daughter.
She's recently widowed, and it's going to follow her daughter, who is now coming of age. And they're bringing back the two aunts.
That's going to be interesting. But so
I think TV shows will be hard to use as a debate for this topic because TV shows.
I don't think so, because I would argue that Star Trek The Next Generation was definitely a reboot of Star Trek, and it worked way better.
I think it's a completely different story in that same universe.
I'm not a Trekkie, so I can't speak to this.
Okay,
so
well
that's on y'all.
then we'll do this. So, Ghostbusters Afterlife is coming out this year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
This Thanksgiving.
Yeah, this Thanksgiving. In my opinion, this is a sequel. Joe says this is a reboot.
I think that it is a soft reboot. It is.
It's-
There's a certain amount of time
It's
between.
continuing the story from 2.
Well, we don't know that it's continuing the story from 2.
The
We know that it's for
trailer-
sure carrying the story from 1, but because it hasn't shown anything as far as Vigo the Carpathian, we do not know.
So you're correct.
Okay. So I think what makes the difference between a soft reboot and just a continuation is the main characters. So the main characters from 1 and 2 are not the main characters in Afterlife. They are not. But it's still continuing in the world. So it's rebooting the story from a new perspective, in a new time, in a new place, with new things. But it's still technically in the same world.
Dan Aykroyd, as Ray, is in this movie.
He is, but he's not the main character.
He's not the main character,
so you're
nor
saying
the main
that,
focal point.
So you're saying that because the main character is not in it, it doesn't mean that's not a sequel?
No, she's saying that because the main characters are no longer the main characters, that is what changes it.
That's what makes it a soft reboot, to reestablish the new focal point of what can carry forward in this new reboot of iteration of it.
Okay, so would you also say that a reboot would have to consist of, as Joe says, because Joe likes to say that, I'm pretty sure that the production company is planning on doing more movies of this. So do you think, so we don't know, so with Ghostbusters Afterlife, you think that this is going to basically be a relaunching of a new series with these kids?
Yes. Ghostbusters is a huge, humongous IP.
It's
Unfortunately, Hollywood and our entertainment is all about making the money. It's not always about making good stories, which is why we get so many reboots, I feel. Unfortunately, because like all of the remakes of all of the Disney movies and the villain movies and all of the retellings, like, come on, guys. There are so many stories out there that you are not telling. But they're doing it for the money. And Ghostbusters is a huge IP. Because our generation is the nostalgia generation. And it's what's propelling the machine of reboots forward. So I feel like this is... I mean, it's going to be successful either way, I'm pretty sure. So they're just going to make more.
I feel, like I said, I feel that as far as my definition of reboots or retellings or sequels... really dictates on if it's a reboot, then that means it's a... so I'll give you another example that I gave Joe. Blade Runner 2077, okay?
2044.
Excuse me, thank you, 2044. Where are you 2077? Oh,
I don't know.
Cyberpunk.
That's Cyberpunk 2077.
So I only know that because somebody else watched it, and I was like, oh man, that year was off by 33 years.
Yes. So 2044 Blade Runner technically has a whole new cast, but it follows what happened in Blade Runner, the first one, because Harrison Ford plays the same character. He's not the main character, but he's like the secondary character. Just like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of Crystal Skulls technically is the fourth Indiana Jones movie.
He is the main character in that. Indiana Jones is still the main character in that.
Right, so we
Joe's definition,
we discussed it because it was technically supposed to be a passing of the torch. However, to my defense, the next movie would not have been called Indiana Jones had they continued on that trend. It would have had a different name and followed his son.
Well, no, he was junior. Technically, he was junior.
Yeah.
He was junior, so it could have been Indiana Jones.
They would have found another way to make it something else, but if it had been established and they had gone forward, it would have been considered a soft reboot by this definition.
The fifth one would have been a reboot, not the fourth one.
Correct.
The fourth one would have been a really gray area of the name that I don't know what we would call it.
And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of times where the torch is supposed to be passed or something's going to happen. And there are... So in our initial debate, we discussed what I consider to be failed soft reboots. And those include, towards the end of the Transformers franchise, the moving in of different main characters in order to switch stuff over. We talked about failed hard reboots, and the best example of that is Ghostbusters 2016. That was
trash.
Clearly supposed to be the ground level of putting something new out, and it just failed horribly.
I have yet to see this movie, and
don't waste your time.
I don't know if I want to.
Trash.
Other like weird times for reboots are like, I don't know how many Batmans we have in our universe, or how many Spider-Mans we have.
And those are all so Spider-Man is actually a really good example. I was thinking about that. So technically, Amazing Spider-Man was a hard reboot, right?
Correct. Actually,
however, the Tom Holland Spider-Man, because we didn't see his origin story specifically with Uncle Ben and all that.
All right, let's do this one last time. My name is Peter Parker. I was bitten by a radioactive spider. And for 10 years, I've been the one and only Spider-Man. I'm pretty sure you know the rest.
Great power comes great responsibility.
I feel like that was actually more of a soft reboot.
And then you could make the argument that the Incredible Hulk, as presented in the MCU, is a softer reboot.
Yes.
Because it is technically a continuation of the television show from the 80s. And there, of course, can be examples of and this came across in what we were talking about, soft reboots and hard reboots all within the same franchise. And we only really had one example of that, and the example, and this one's a good one, is Terminator. Because Terminator has numbered sequels, which are obvious continuations, but then they switched...
But they forcibly did it to themselves. Like, it was a purposeful reboot, hard reboot,
But
soft reboot.
There's only the only downside to that, though, is that you can't really do that. You can't say it's a hard reboot, soft reboot because of time travel. If time travel exists, you can't do it.
I think that you can.
No, you can't do if it involves time travel.
So let me ask you a question. When the next Doctor takes over, are you going to consider that a soft reboot of the program since they're bringing back the original
No, it's a sequel.
guys, the original writers?
It's a sequel.
So, for Doctor Who...
And like I said, TV shows are hard.
Doctor Who is... That's part of what makes Doctor Who the show.
Yeah.
Like, it does that intentionally. Terminator specifically has time travel. Bringing in time travel to whether or not makes it a hard reboot or soft reboot is tricky, which I guess is what makes it a gray area. Terminator is this
Is it gray?
gray
Yes.
splotch thing.
Yeah.
That's
No.
because it goes Terminator, Terminator 2, Terminator 3, not so great. Terminator 4, this is trash. Terminator 5, what are we doing?
Well,
and then
because-
Terminator 6. You know what? Just forget those other three happened.
So, Paige, have you watched Cobra Kai yet?
No.
Okay, but you know about it. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Okay, Jill thinks, and I disagree, Cobra Kai is a soft reboot, when to me it's a continuation of the story.
To me, it is a soft reboot because while you are kind of following the main characters from the first one, you are not following the events and the main character of the first
Well,
one.
the events, because it's like 30 years later.
Right, but that's why I'm saying I think that in
And
order
it
for it to be a
technically-
reboot, it has to be
And it technically
enough time
follows.
between the two.
It technically follows Johnny, who has not reeled back
I
from his
think-
loss in the first movie.
So I think on this one, I'm going to have to go with CN.
Vindication!
I think it's actually a continuation.
It is like I get. I don't
I
see the way.
sided with you on other stuff, so like there's this. I'm the moderate in the middle. It's fine.
What do you guys think? What's your opinion
Yeah, what do you think is what makes a soft reboot versus a hard reboot?
versus the sequel? Because
Yes.
sequel is also part of it
Yes.
too. Let us know in the comments below. This is the topic that we constantly talk about.
Yeah, we
Don't
talked
worry,
about
we're
this a
gonna talk about
lot.
a lot.
Like
Lot
this is
more.
not the first time.
It might even come up in other episodes, but while you're down there, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. Also hit the notification. That way you get to hear more debates. But other than that, yeah, you guys got anything else?
I mean,
Joe?
Yes, we always will have more to talk about. But we're running out of time. So
I'll just wrap it up with go watch Dark Fate.